you see, Ovolo I find extremely interesting.
Great to
Right?
hear.
And the reason I find it very interesting is that it has a tremendous brand recognition, right? For the size it has, because you're still sub 20 hotels, roughly, right? And geographically, you are kind of Southeast Asia, Australia focused, and yet you're extremely well known, right? Why?
Yeah, look, I think, Ovolo has been, or the brand name Ovolo has been in the market now for a considerable period of time. It did start in 2002 in Hong Kong in a shared, in a service department model. But this year we celebrate 10 years of being in the hotel game. It was awfully auspicious, 10-10-10, 2010. Our founder pivoted to the hotel model. And not long after that found some initial success in Australia with the Melbourne property. I think our brand recognition has grown considerably since the expansion to Australia. I think the way the Australian market obviously works with having such a large domestic component, and we've obviously been able to, with the exclusion of Perth, we're now visible in Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, and Canberra. So in terms of those larger cities where, you often get people traveling for both business or leisure purposes, you are coming across our name quite often. And it's also through the success of the teams down there as well. I mean, Ovolo Woolloomooloo has been the #1 hotel in Sydney for more than 2 years on TripAdvisor. 1888 has been bouncing between #2, #3. Last year, Woolloomooloo was also #1 in Australia and the South Pacific from TripAdvisor. So it's certainly getting the visibility and the recognition. And last year was also 2019, the HM Awards Brand of the Year for Australia. So I think there's certainly something with the model that resonates well with that market, and the fact that 70% of the business there is domestic. You do tend to come across the name quite frequently. Obviously, having there's a huge component of Australians in Hong Kong. One of the initial reasons that our founder decided that Australia might be a good place outside of Hong Kong to go, and we've technically followed that as well when we've looked at Indonesia and say, how can we've just recently acquired a property in Bali. We took ownership of that late last year, and went into renovations 1st of March, which in hindsight was fantastic timing. Having said that, very challenging to renovate a hotel via Zoom though, but we're getting there. But with that, obviously Australians make up a big portion of the market. So how do you go somewhere and hit the ground running and build on that brand awareness that you have? It's certainly makes sense from an expansion point of view. And we've kept that in mind also when we look at other opportunities outside of Southeast Asia, because there are always gateway cities in just the way that the airlines travel and things like that, connection points. So yeah, it's very important. I think it's that added value that you get when you stay with us. It's not a typical hotel stay. The art is not a typical collection. Every property is eclectic. 3 of them are historic heritage listed buildings, which just ooze with character. In Hong Kong, we have one that was the very first industrial building in Hong Kong to be converted to a hotel. There's a handful of those now, but Ovolo Southside was the first one. So I think there's definitely quite a significant uniqueness to the portfolio, and we always try and do things just a little bit differently. So with that in mind, it becomes quite memorable, and then through memorable comes good word of mouth, and we continue to work on the good things that our teams are doing on the ground.
So if I would have met you in, let's say, December 2019, right? We would have caught up for a drink, and we would have caught up at, let's say, in March 2020, and we would have caught up right now with Zoom, right? How would our feeling for 2020 would have been in December 2019? Would you have gone in there and tell me, Fabian, you know what, this is going to be an absolute outstanding year. We're going to have our 10-year and we're going to nail it, right? And how between December and January, or at what point did you realize it's not just the common flu we are dealing with? This is going to be hitting us quite hard.
Sure. Yeah, look, to be honest, I don't think I would have told you it was going to be a year to remember. Certainly not like it has turned out to be. But from the Hong Kong portfolio as well, obviously we were coming off the back of some protests that turned a little ugly there for a period of time on the back end of 2019. So we were looking towards the new year and thinking, is Chinese New Year in the lunar calendar? Is that going to be a turning point, and we'll see some positive road to settling the unrest? I think it quickly became a backseat news to COVID right around Chinese New Year. That was kind of first reported January 26th in Hong Kong, I believe it was, around that time.
Did you expect already then that it's going to be that bad?
COVID, you mean?
Yeah. Did you expect that it's going to hit us really that badly?
No, not personally. I think to the scale and some of the measures that have taken place, I think it's certainly become a larger area for concern globally as it has continued to spread. And I think a lot of countries now are having that that second wave, that third wave, and it's been around for long enough that you can almost sometimes take the foot off the accelerator and maybe not be as cautious, and then you see a few issues flare up again. Hong Kong's got the same thing right now. We're having a few more locally transmitted cases where it's been very, very low for a long period of time. So it just does tell you, you have to remain diligent throughout and continue. I mean, obviously it does boil down to a bit of basics when it comes to cleanliness and hygiene and things like that. But understanding, I suppose, how it all spreads. I think there's no way that a lot of people would have predicted it would have had such an effect for such a period of time that it has. Hong Kong benefited, I believe, in terms of being a little bit ahead of the game, having that SARS knowledge from 2002, 2003. Certainly a bit more than other parts of the world, and Hong Kong has never really gone into a full lockdown as such. There's obviously been distancing measures and food and beverage recommendations, and some elements of the entertainment business were told to close at a period of time, but there was very different to obviously the steps that were taken.
You knew how to handle it, right? It was. I don't want to say it was a season 2 coming, but you had been in a similar situation before. The people knew how to go about it. How was it different to, for example, the Australian portfolio?
Well, I just don't think there was a comparable instance, in terms of what were the measures that were needed to be taken. I think, you still today, there's very few people wearing masks. The ones wearing masks, people with 𝐸𝐸, rather than a prevention measure. So I think it's not universally still accepted that, hey, this would be one of the ways to potentially stem the flow. I think it was quite interesting that the whole idea of social distancing was a foreign one for a period of time, but then once it became a bit more obvious that this was going to be a bit more of a bigger pandemic than, as you referred before, it's not the flu. There was some aggression in these places where people were saying, hey, don't stand that close to me, and as a business, why aren't you stipulating distancing dots and things like that? Why aren't you enforcing this from a business point of view, which we haven't seen? If I look at it on a flip side, that level has not necessarily been seen in Hong Kong, but there's more around why don't you understand my view, and for the sake of everybody, let's wear a mask for everybody's sake. Respect the fact that that's one of the ways that we believe it could be stemmed. So let's everybody do it, rather than at times where we've seen a bit of finger pointing at businesses for maybe not doing what's necessary, when ultimately it is quite a foreign event for many.
I mean, it's bizarre, no? I mean, let's look at it. We go out of the house right now, and the first thing somebody will say within the family will say, "You pack your mask."
Yeah.
Right? if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, okay, put that person in a mental institution. Where are we that kisses, hugs, and touch have become weapons of mass destruction?
Yeah.
And I heard a story from. Go ahead.
No, sorry. It's as you say, it's the old wallet, phone, keys, and mask, right?
Yeah, and I think the way Asia and the West have always looked at it differently is, I think in the Asian world, you look at it from perspective, okay, I'm doing that for you. I'm wearing the mask so you are not getting sick.
Mm.
Versus in the West, you kind of think of it the other way and saying, like, why do I need to wear a mask to protect myself from you? And I found that very, very strange. Now, as regards to your portfolio, did you have to close some of the hotels, or were you one of the ones that says we're going to keep it through? Because I think there was some, I would assume, emotional ups and downs over the last couple of months for you being at the top of the organization.
Yeah, no, certainly. Look, I think both regions responded quite differently. I'll give credit to Australia, I suppose, in this regard. The JobKeeper program was very efficient, organized and executed quite quickly. So that was obviously something that we were able to tap into as a business. But on the flip side of that, also, there was, quite significant mandates that really required us to close down certain parts of our business. Restaurants, for example, not having any tables any more than 2 people and things. You can't do Valentine's Day every day of the week and be profitable, right? So, there was those elements where we weren't able to keep all parts of the business open. And obviously, in Hong Kong, we weren't forced to close any of on any of the outlets, and we were able to push through. There's been fluctuating amounts of demand. I suppose when you look at Hong Kong, the staycation market, it's really one city, right? I mean, there's
like Singapore, right, or like Bali. It's dependent on international travel.
It is, yeah, it is, and I think, obviously at the moment borders are open if you're a resident to get back in. But even prior to that, the mainland Chinese market made up 68% of overnight visitors into Hong Kong. And that's obviously been a segment in the latter half of 2019 that wasn't firing on all cylinders either. And that has ground to a halt for both leisure and business purposes. So look, it's been challenging, no doubt. Hong Kong has come to the party in the end, I suppose, from an assistance point of view. The employment subsidy scheme came into effect from June, and that will see, I suppose, some support for the back half of 2020. But that's obviously also surrounding the mechanism is around surrounding obviously keeping jobs, right? Yeah. And being able to, I suppose, keep your head count up. It does give you the flexibility to pivot in terms of where you might need to allocate that manpower, or whether or not your food and beverage is got some better numbers than perhaps your housekeeping requirements, so you're able to move people around there as long as you maintain a certain headcount. So that's helped. But yeah, look, it has been a very challenging first half of the year. Something that I don't think many people can say that they've had too much experience in the past. But ultimately, hospitality is very much a people business. You're very human centric. We can't do our business virtually. There's certainly a blip in the road, but you need to look after those people that have been delighting your guests, for all that year and building up that brand awareness. If you're unable to kind of, keep those guys engaged and on board, it'll take you longer to rebuild when things start coming back. So we've been doing our best to make sure that, we maximize everybody's opportunities where we can. And there was a couple of opportunities where, due to certain visas and things like that, where they, they may not have been covered from any government schemes due to a working holiday visa or something along those lines. We've recently started up a campaign where 5% of our direct revenue will go back to supporting our colleagues that we're unable to keep fully employed, but also are not receiving any assistance. So it's just one of the ways that we're trying to obviously put ourselves in a place where we can help those people that were obviously helping the business pre-COVID.
That's awesome. Now you mentioned coming back, right? And then until about the beginning of the week, I was going, yes, we're most probably coming back right now. And then you got the news that Melbourne goes back into a lockdown for 6 weeks, right? And part of me was thinking and sitting there going like, haven't we learned anything, right? In the motto of kind of just because I can doesn't mean I should. Also understanding fully the finally I can go out again and meet my friends, so to speak, because even if you have drinks, virtual coffees over Zoom, it's just not the same.
No.
But how do you think that will impact the future of experiencing travel, right? So what if a staff member taps you on the shoulder? Are you going to shriek? Are you going to sue? Are you going to go, yeah, easy? How do you foresee that changing? Because some people say hygiene is a new luxury. And I don't really believe so, because I think in hotels we were always clean, right? And funnily enough, if you look at the OTA businesses and how they have gotten hit by cancellations and revenue declines, the ones that are actually making more money are the homestay businesses. Technically, the ones that are not don't have the permanent cleaning standards as a hotel in place. How do you see that changing from a guest experience? So if I ask you to walk me through a guest experience 6 months from now, 12 months from now, how would that look? How do you envisage that?
In all honesty, I hope it doesn't change too much. And the reason I say that is you're quite right in the fact that from a cleanliness and hygiene point of view, that was always one of the quality indicators, you know, from a good hotel, right? And if you look at any good guest experience, you know, rating site, one of the top 5 things that you will need to rate the property on will be cleanliness, right? So I think that's always something that's been front and center for hotels. I think you certainly cannot blissfully be ignorant of the situation that we're in. There will need to be some additional measures, and it will obviously improve along the way. You know, some have had to quickly pivot and install maybe temporary mechanisms, you know, the acrylic shields and all these type of things that are popping up, which, you know, every interior designer is kind of cringing at. You know, this beautiful desk that's now, you know, got it framed up.
You remember the banks? When you came to the bank counter? That's it, right?
Yeah. I thought that was supposed to be to stop, you know, the bank heists, not the so no, I think you know, it'll get a lot better in terms of, you know, monitoring temperatures and things like that. You won't necessarily have to stand there and wait while someone points a temperature gun at your head just to make sure you don't, you know, have a temperature. Those things will get a little bit more seamless, you know, body scanners and things like they have at airports. So, you know, you can pick that up seamlessly without impacting the guest experience. You can't not do it, because then you'd be looking as if you're being a little careless given the current situation. You know, having those facilities available in public spaces where people can sanitize themselves easily, again, making it look like it's part of the new, I suppose, measures you have in place to maintain cleanliness and hygiene. I think respecting the fact that some people will keep this, you know, quite close to themselves, and it will be a priority for many, and not, you know, in the next 3 or 4 months slip away and start to go back to the way it was. And I think some people will appreciate the fact that, you know, that you are keeping it top of mind. But at the same time, we need to remember that travel is escapism, right? You're getting out of your normal life, your day to day.
Absolutely.
And do you want to arrive at your hotel that you've been dying to try because it's top rated and it's got great views and your friends said you got to go, and then, you know, you arrive in there and you feel like you've entered a medical facility? I mean, nobody is going to want to see that. But also, you can't be at a point where you're not taking reasonable steps to protect not only your guests but your employees as well, because that's obviously their day to day. And providing them with the right equipment and what they feel comfortable in to perform their duties as well. So, look, I would hope, honestly, there will be some design changes. I would say we We have, for example, removed a buffet from our Bali property that we were going to put in. We did that for a couple of reasons. One was, are we going to need it post-COVID? Will people want to go and graze in that type of dining environment? Second thing was, we thought we could actually do a better quality product if we did it on a kind of a la carte basis. But then it's, our property there is not too far shy of 200 rooms. So, if you do end up doing, getting yourself back to occupancies, north of 70%, if too many of them have breakfast included, it's going to be high volume. So we've always got to make sure that, are we able to still deliver on the quality of experience at the same time? So we did remove the buffet, and we thought we could do a better job. We could remove that element of concern of shared dining, shared food experience. But we've also left the relevant MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing that we had already designed. We fitted that into the wall, and it's being covered. So if 12 months from now, there are new ways to serve buffets in a different format that people are craving, and when it comes to a leisure experience, when I'm on my week or 2 weeks holiday and I do want to sit and graze and I do want to have a buffet, if that becomes the norm, we've kind of halfway prepared ourselves to be able to adapt back. But it was more around not only providing a better experience, but also taking into consideration some potential concerns moving forward as that property will open right on hopefully the start of the recovery. When you look at shared spaces, I think you'll see there's going to be some, design changes. It probably won't be maybe as intimate as some places have been before, but I certainly hope we don't take the social distancing too far when it comes to sparse furniture, because that would obviously, again, really impact on the whole experience from an interior design point of view as well. But there are other ways to still being able to address that. So look, ultimately, I hope we are able to not only be transparent, but also up our game in regards to those basic requirements of, as you say, as a hotel being, cleanliness, hygiene being, a major concern from day one anyway, and just really reinforcing that, but also communicating it, because it's letting your guests know that you've understood it and this is what we're doing. And if there's anything else you'd like to know, please do contact us. That is something that I think is very important. We've recently launched our OCDC, obsessive commitment.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and look, there's when you look at that, I mean, we're outlining what we're doing, right, from a cleanliness point of view, giving people a little bit more comfort that we've addressed issues that may have been a concern for them. But at the same time, we've done it in an Ovolo way, right? We haven't gone down this kind of more sanitary, more medical related, here's the facts. We've made sure it's remained on brand.
You stick to your own voice, right?
100%. And I think that's why we've embraced what is needed, but we've also come across still in our Ovolo fashion. And I think that's very important to maintain integrity in your brand and be able to best represent yourself through these times.
We have quite a few of the execs that I talk to. Everyone seems to be talking about domestic and leisure, right? And my concern really always when it comes to that point is, and I agree that domestic and leisure will most probably be the first that are coming back. Do people have enough money to actually keep that up? Right? Because, for example, you mentioned the job keeper. Up until now, it says end of September, right? And people will most probably look there and say, okay, do I then have, are we fooling ourselves to think reopening is recovery? And I think Melbourne just closing everything again is a wake-up call, to that rightly or wrongly so, of why it was done. But do we require something else? Do we require something where you mentioned earlier hotels are it's a people industry, right? Do we need to shift our focus to how do we create hospitality at home? And I'm talking the cocktail classes that you saw there, the bars on wheels where you can get the cocktail pre-mixed from your favorite bar, the food stuff, the delivery services. Is this the new hospitality? That you essentially become the experience, but you can experience Ovolo wherever you want to be? Or we are 5 years away from that?
I don't think we're 5 years away from that. I don't think it's necessarily going to replace a typical hospitality experience. But, you know, one thing that we've done with quite a little bit of success, especially in Australia, where lockdowns did go into place statewide, you know, previously, was adapting our restaurants and doing restaurants in room. And we did that with great success in Canberra at our Nishi property, using individual hotel rooms as private restaurants. And the same thing in Woolloomooloo in Sydney. We've taken our social hour. It's part of one of our, obviously, our key Ovolo perks, where you would typically come down to the bar and mix and mingle and meet other guests.
Yeah, I did one of those. I wanted to come to that one later, to ask what's going to happen to that one.
Yeah, well, we currently have it. It's our social hour on wheels. So we roll the trolley up to the door, and we'll shake the Negroni in front of you and pass it on. So you need to entertain yourself after that, but we're still providing the experience to the door if you're not comfortable to come down. So, you know, being able to pivot in those areas, I think, is extremely important. We're looking at, obviously, coming out the back of this. I think the gift of travel will be highly rated for the recovery domestically the world over, I think. And you know, we're in the process of obviously getting ourselves set up to be able to offer.
When you say gift of travel, do you mean like incentives? Like incentive travel?
No. I mean, like from a kind of a personality or friends and family point of view. You're looking at what do I get you for Christmas? You know, maybe I'll get you a hotel gift stay, or a travel agent. Here's a voucher, bits and pieces. I think that opportunity to be able to gift travel or hospitality to someone,
absolutely,
I think will be quite popular. So we're setting ourselves up presently to be able to offer that in the 2 locations, so that we can hopefully incentivize a bit of a return to hotels when people are happy to do so. I think that whole idea of experiencing hotel products at home certainly has merit. It's one of those things I don't think you're ever really going to replace the entire experience. It's something where, when you walk into a great hotel, it's the scent, it's the fragrance that hits you at the front door. It's the artist that was chosen for that print above reception. It's the interior designer used. It's the comfort of the leather or the suede on the couch. And I think all of that, is very hard to deliver at home.
Things you can't put into words, right? The things, know exactly what you mean. The things that if somebody asks you, why did you have a great experience? They kind of go like, don't really know, but it was great.
Yeah.
All of those subtle things, absolutely.
And I think it also goes down to, when you look at things, when you do a holidaying at home, and even if I look at, again, I'll use Australia here as an example, just because the domestic market is so huge. Tourism Australia is obviously pushing that whole, holiday at home, vacation at home type of thing. And same with New Zealand as well, actually, they're doing that, explore your backyard type of thing. So, often there'll be potentially quite a costly travel element that will no longer be there if you're doing it at home. So you may find that people invest a little bit more in accommodation they may not have normally stayed at because they didn't have to pay for international airfares.
Buying up.
Yeah. Or, they may look at opportunities to add value to their stay package when they may have normally just taken the kind of bed and breakfast option, but they may look at kind of widening that with the opportunities available. So I think it's also being smart at what you're looking at marketing post-COVID, and when people are getting more comfortable to travel, it's not going to be the same things that you were pushing right before this happened, because there will be different considerations. It'll be, it's my first trip in 6 months, right? So better be something pretty special. I don't just want the picture from Instagram. There better be something else there. But then it's also about celebrating the simple things. For a long time, like I think Melbourne is going to the coffee shops, barista coffee is going to skyrocket after 6 weeks. because people will be will be a little bit worried about their espressos or their drip coffees, and they'll be like, "Give me a barista coffee." But it's a simple pleasure, right? And really being able to celebrate that, I think, is going to be key too. So,
but isn't that great? Like, honestly, isn't that awesome? Isn't that great that finally travel gets the recognition it should get? And I'm not talking going back to the days where only a selected few can travel, but equally the mass tourism where you just plow people on top of each other. It has become a commodity, no? I mean, through low-cost airlines, through low-cost this, through low-cost that, we kind of went into the entire thing of, travel is just nothing. You know, I'll hop on a plane and I go there, and then I'll just hang out there, right? And I think we have a great opportunity to change that now. And if you are in that space, which I think Ovolo is in that space of really giving great experiences, you're onto a winner, huh?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where opportunity lies. When there's been a lot of obviously webinars and discussions and things in terms of what is it going to look like and who's going to do well and things like that. I honestly think properties that have a unique offering, properties that are a little smaller in nature, that mass market 500 room connected to the convention center, perhaps so less appeal. Those budget-friendly options, if they're not transparent enough in terms of what they've done to look after the guest, may also suffer. Doesn't mean it's a subpar product, but sometimes there's that challenge of really communicating it to the guests that, we have gone that extra matter. No, this is where we sit in the market. This is the price proposition for our business, but we have equally done our part to be post-COVID ready. I think if you have a trouble or challenge communicating that, that will hinder recovery. But no, you're right. I think our type of property, the Ovolo type of property, offering some great locations around the country that we're in, but also some very unique offerings and some very customizable experiences. And I think those type of things are going to be very important for people once they get to travel again. And to be honest, I think Hong Kong is obviously challenging for us, as there is no real domestic market other than obviously once the borders reopen with China. And I think the best opportunity for us in the short term will be the Greater Bay Area. But if I'm looking at New Zealand and Australia as examples, or Australia where we are, I think it's absolutely fantastic that there'll be a lot more locals looking local, because there's a lot that people haven't seen, and I think you kind of open their eyes as to what is available closer to home. I was talking to somebody that was just outside of Newcastle last weekend, and bustling. All of the caravan parks, you couldn't get a spot. Those type of things where people are like, I want to get out of the city, I want my own space, and those type of areas are going to benefit for sure. So when you get to the city properties, the point of differentiation and really being able to add a bit of value to the experience over and top of the rate and the location, I think is where the opportunity lies to really create a memorable point of difference.
Yeah, I think.
Can you see me?
Oh, yep. It's.
Sorry, yeah, my headphone just died. Technically.
It's got a little bit of background noise now, but I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'll mute, so otherwise you hear the kids screaming. Where was I? Yes, punching above your weight will be gone, right? Mm-hmm. Those properties that were just milking it because the market was good. Now, I guess your day has completely changed to what 6 months ago, right? And I see you're very active on LinkedIn. But for those who don't have the opportunity to talk to you on a daily basis or just have a more intimate conversation with you, what goes on in your mind on a daily basis in regards to your teams, your overall organization, to keep it going and to keep it motivated?
That what you just said at the very end there is exactly it. I think quite often, it's dragged on, and especially in Hong Kong, for quite a period now. If I look at it from, social unrest straight into COVID, it's been a year been more than a year of business as usual. So how do you stop it becoming the new usual? And I think make sure, we obviously need to understand from a financial standpoint, this is obviously not a profitable time for the industry, but conveying that through to the team members that have been, where we probably haven't had the same amount of manpower in the restaurants and bars, and the housekeepers might have been doing an extra room here and there, and generally in the short term that would never be a concern, but when you've been doing it for a prolonged period of time, you got to make sure that we keep up the motivation. It's still a guest experience industry. Those that are coming through are more valuable than ever. Really being able to show them that, hey, thank you very much for choosing to stay with us, and keeping that smile and positivity and things is certainly a key part of our team's leadership on a daily basis. There's nothing, I suppose, that could be worse than being able to secure some business at this time and then disappointing. I think that's something that's always top of mind. We need to make sure, and we've seen it in Hong Kong. We've seen a little bit of smaller event business started to come back, and that's fantastic. But also, smaller events typically, they do require a lot more time and attention, and making sure that we're giving them, every ounce of support to be successful, because in the short to medium term, there will not be that typical larger business that would normally be there. So, yeah, look, I think making sure we're taking the opportunity. Are we missing any opportunities? Are there any new opportunities on the way that we need to be abreast of? I think that's something that often crosses my mind. We've never been very focused, I suppose, specifically on the inbound Chinese market into Hong Kong. Obviously, we get some, but it's not through specifically marketing there. Our typical, guest mix, within the top 3 or 4 or 5, we would always have US, UK, Australia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia. They always kind of fluctuate around. China would be there for our bigger projects, bigger properties, but that wasn't necessarily due to any specific efforts in that space. So we've proactively looked at, especially for Hong Kong, that's going to be one of the biggest segments to come back quicker than others. Again, location based and sheer numbers. But how do we look after them? How do we connect with them? How do we, make sure that we get the quality of our product across the board to them? Obviously, it's a very different social medium in that space, so it's not going to be the way that we market to everybody else. How do we make sure that we've, taken into their culinary expectations, service expectations, and making sure that we set ourselves up for success there? So we've done a fair bit of work in that. And we're also, of course, preparing for launching in Indonesia, where, Indonesia was one of the highest growth markets into Hong Kong over the last couple of years. Obviously not huge numbers, but in terms of percentage growth, was one of the largest ones. So, that also breeds well for having the synergy there of our product that will open later this year. So how do we set that up for success? How do we, get the collaboration going between the Australian portfolio and the Hong Kong portfolio? All of those things are, top of mind at the moment, and of course trying to renovate the property with actually out being able to see it is a bit of a challenge. I've joked with my GM there that by the time restrictions open up, I will be able to strategically advise on the location of some of the pot plants. I think will pretty much be all that's left to do by the time that happens. But look, it's been great. We've got a good team there. We've got a good project management. Our designers are local, a firm from the UK that has a Bali office. So look, we're really excited about that. But yeah, it's certainly, not only looking at the opportunities in the business, where is it coming from? How long will, the current restrictions continue to affect the business? How do we keep our employees positive, engaging, and grasping every opportunity, given that it has been, a considerable period of time? And let's get our new projects ready to rock and roll. All of those things are kind of a daily basis rattling around.
So you're saying a lot about setting it up for success, right?
Sure.
How does Tim get up in the morning and set himself up for success?
I wish I got up and I ran to clear my head, and I came back and I have a protein smoothie or something like that. And yes, no.
Yoga.
Yeah. Namaste. No. Look, for me, I think it's just making sure you do ultimately have sufficient time for yourself to go through your priorities. And I think that comes from just, getting yourself in early, getting yourself set up before a majority arrives. Towards the end of the day, you obviously.
Early bird.
Sorry?
You're an early bird.
Yeah. Two reasons for that as well. A bit of traffic through the tunnels and things. No. I enjoy getting a bit of an early start because it does let you kind of get things in motion, and especially when you're dealing with anything that's in a different time zone. If I'm doing calls, anyone in the US, I'm always doing that at 8 or 9 o'clock or even earlier in the morning sometimes, just to get up at the right end of the business day at that end. And look, I think a similar thing applies towards the end of the day. You spend a lot of time with team members throughout, and then at the end of the day, you get a chance to kind of recoup your thoughts and things again before calling it a day. So I think just making sure that there's enough time there for yourself to be able to review objectives and priorities, just making sure you're making headway on those initiatives that move the dial. I think we certainly are there's a lot of clutter, I will say, at the moment, and without being able to really prioritize and organize and see through the clutter and make sure that the things that you are concentrating on are going to be significant impacts to your business. That's key. So assigning enough time for yourself to kind of dissect that is certainly key, in my opinion.
And let's assume somebody wants to go into hospitality, right? And they come to you right now and say, Tim, just give me a good reason why on earth should I come into hospitality?
It's a growth industry, and it'll always be a growth industry. It's almost like student accommodation, right? Someone is always going to be studying, all right? In hospitality, someone's always going to be traveling, right? And I think the diverse nature of your work and what you can get exposed to and the different streams and sectors within the business are very diverse. And I think of course, there are other careers that can also offer this, but if you're a people's person, if you love being hands-on, if social interaction, is one of your key drivers, and you do well in this space. And like a lot of people have probably found out with this work from home initiative, some people hate it. It just goes against them. They need that interaction. They love the creativity and the innovation of bouncing ideas off people. And without that office environment, it's harder to do it in this type of situation, right? So look, if someone came to me and said, give me a good reason to go into hospitality, I said, I think that the work, it's an industry that will not die. It's been around for forever and a day, and that will continue. It's just the type of experiences and the type of products that are available will no doubt change and adapt over time. I think if Elon has anything to do with it, we'll go intergalactic as well, right? But I think it's the diverseness of the business as well. If you do want to do, if you have a little bit more financially inclined, or you are looking into product development, real estate development, hospitality management, there is a huge amount of different aspects to the hospitality business, and it's a growth industry. The opportunities will be there for someone that's willing to commit the time and effort in, like an industry. But this is a challenge for us as an industry, but we will come out of it much stronger, I'm sure. And I think this has almost sped up innovation, I think, in a little small factor of the industry. I think sometimes due to costs, due to timelines, due to the fact that there's never been a good time to do a renovation because we're always 90%. Hospitality and hotels have sometimes been a little bit slow in reacting with the times. I think coming out the other side of this may have given us a little bit of a time to catch up, and maybe a little bit of a shot in terms of, hey, there are a few new things. There is new technology here. that's available to you, and it's given some people time to sit down and evaluate that too. So the opportunities will remain in hospitality, I firmly believe.
100%. Now, we started by talking about having a drink in December 2019. Fast forward, we're going to have a drink in 5 years' time, right? Are we going to sit there on Zoom talking to each other about D-Day? Or are we going to sit somewhere and saying this was the best thing that in hindsight could have happened to the industry?
Neither. D-Day won't be impending, and I certainly don't think this is a blessing. It's had an enormous impact on too many people financially. I think the amount of debt that's being incurred globally at the moment is yeah, it's huge, and that, to the extent, cannot be overly positive. Obviously, there will take a long time for businesses and people to recover from this. So I don't think it's going to be the best thing that's ever happened, for sure. And I don't think we'll be celebrating Doomsday. I think we'll be looking back going, gee, you remember that time? How many new companies potentially came out of this? Everyone suddenly, we might joke that everyone suddenly became experts in selling hygiene products, perhaps, but there's more vendors of those than I ever knew about. But yeah, look, all fairness aside, I think it's an opportunity where people can obviously look and really look into the core values of the business. Was everything I was doing before this absolutely necessary? Was there some things that I had that was an unnecessary luxury? Did I have elements to my business that weren't adding value? We may say, oh, geez, you remember that time? And now I've got this technology, I've got that technology, and it's brought me 300% more guests, from this segment than I had pre-COVID. I think those are the types of things. I think we'll be talking about the wins that we've had, or the opportunities that arose out of that. I think there's going to be more, as I said, more positives from the other side of this, because with these type of things comes a certain level of opportunity. And I think especially where we're at now from a technology space point of view, I think it's far more developed than perhaps where we've been in the past. And I think this will obviously, give rise to a few new companies where some have fallen by the wayside. I'm sure there'll be opportunities that come out of this. So I think we'll be talking about the opportunities that came up and the wins that we've had, and just hope that it doesn't happen again anytime soon.